Welcome to Web of Tomorrow, a podcast all about the web and the people who build it. This is Adam Harris. In this episode, I talked with Marie, who is a front-end developer at Algolia in France. And she talked about Storybook, which is an interactive development and testing environment for React and React Native UI components. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
How did you first hear about React Storybook, or how did you get started with it?
Yeah, I heard about it pretty close of the release date, beginning of 2016. So I was working on a presentation from my colleague about how you can test your React and Redux application. And basically, I just came across React Storybook, and I actually loved the idea because on a previous mission I worked on with Ember, we were doing our own Storybook, and it was a way for us to present our to showcase our components and to test them actually, and to show how you can use them. And I found that very useful. And so having a tool that actually already do everything for you, and you just have to start developing, I think it was an amazing idea, and I started to use it.
Cool. And so what is React Storybook exactly?
Yeah, basically it's a tool that provides you an isolated environment when you can develop your UI components in total isolation. And so it forces you to be outside of your complex application, which actually to develop is easier because you are not polluted by a lot of stuff. You just design your components and develop it, and that's it. So you can concentrate on the API.
Okay.
And so basically this tool is, you've got a dedicated interface when you write your own stories, which is basically your component at a precise state.
Okay, cool. So you actually create your components first inside of React Storybook. That way you're not inside of your complex app or anything. You're not having to click around a million times to get to that component or whatever. Yes,
exactly. If you want to actually concentrate on a specific substate of your components, you can pass the right props and you have a dedicated story for it. And then it's easier than if you're in the middle of your app, then you need to actually be in the right substate to actually develop your dedicated behavior. So it's a lot easier. And one thing that is great is that you can think API first. It's something actually I like to tell, because often we want to create generic components, and then it's harder to do that just to say. So here, because you are not inside your app, you are forced to do that. You are in isolation, so you can really create generic components.
Cool. So how do you get started using it? Do you just npm install it inside of your app?
The team developed a command line. So if you already have a React application, you just install globally the package, which is called Get Storybook, and then you run it, and it will create for you all the config file, which is at the beginning very, very low files. I mean, it's not a lot of files, but still you will have something working. You just then type npm run Storybook, and that's it. You get the environment, and you can start adding your stories.
Okay. And do you like to put those stories right alongside the component or in a separate place in your app?
On my current project, I do it on a separate place, but I know that some people prefer to have it just next to it. I mean, it's a matter of taste. Maybe also because I don't know, I'm working on a widget library, and so I don't have that much widgets. So in the end, the directory is not full of files. It's one per widget. But if you have a big application, it might be better to actually put them next to the components, or
okay.
At least to respect your directory strategy.
Yeah. Okay, so in your talk about React Storybook, you talked about it helps you design, document, debug, and discuss. Can you talk about each of those, starting with how it helps you design?
Yes. So actually, in that talk, I talk about all the a stage you basically can be if you're a developer. And it starts obviously with the development and the API, but then you need to actually style your components. So with Storybook, it's convenient because once again, you can be like very quickly on one step state of it. So if you know that, for example, with my talk, I showcase the pagination components. But if you want, because you're on the first page, you want to disable one button and you want to style this thing, then you can do it quickly. And then at some point about the documentation, because you have all the stories, actually you created the documentation. It's already there. You don't have anything more to do because you can publish the storybook. So it means that you can build statically the storybook and then publish it on the web or anywhere else. And then people can start looking at your components. They can start playing with them. And Storybooks provides you different add-ons that help you actually document more your components. So it's a great way to showcase your component to other people. And then for the debug part, it's more about debugging. Is to be efficient when debugging, you need to be you need to reproduce the bug in the smallest environment possible to be sure you are not polluted by a lot of stuff. So with Storybook, it's easy because you are already isolated. So you can reuse your components, or you can create, a special story with 2 or 3 of them, and you can actually try to reproduce the bug with the least amount of code involved. And the last part is my favorite part, the discussion, because you can share this storybook with others. Others can actually use your storybook to start discussion. So one obvious example is that if you develop something that involves a component, you can link to the storybook and actually help people to visually see what you are actually saying in your issue or whatever. So, yeah.
Cool. So you said you can kind of create a static website off of it, and then you also said you can link to your storybook. So how does that work exactly? Do you run a command to create a static site and then upload it somewhere and then share that link?
Yeah, exactly. Storybook provides a command that is called build storybook. So if you do npm run build storybook, you will get files, the storybook statically. So then you just deploy it somewhere. So for example, us at Algolia, we deploy this storybook on Netlify, which is hosting SaaS services. And each time we do a PR, it will be deployed on these services, and everyone could access it. But it means you can also deploy it elsewhere. For example, Airbnb, it's what they do with their date picker components. If you go on their GitHub website, you have a link, you can click on it, and you can actually browse their storybook. And you can see if the widgets will fit your needs and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's up to you to imagine what will fit your need best. But you have the tools to do it.
So you can just have it as a part of your build process automatically.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So let's talk a little bit about what it looks like and how you use it. You've got a panel on the left showing all the components, right?
Yes.
And then in the middle you can see the component, and then down below you have some tabs.
Yep.
Okay. So how do you show events that are happening from the component?
So you get a special add-on, which is called the action add-on. And so basically, for all your actions that actually are props, when you pass a function and the function is used by the components, you can replace those functions by another function, which is action, which is provided by the add-on, and then it will be logged. Like if you click somewhere on your component and you use it, then you will see the events logged on the panel on the tab below, and it will also log the payload, so you can see what's happening.
Cool. And then how do you show the component in various states?
So when you wrote stories, basically what you first create it's what is called the story spine. So let's say we have a component which is a pagination component. You will say I want to create stories for the pagination, and then you will start to write story. And basically each story is a substate of your component, because for each story you actually declare your components, so you can vary the props used and stuff like that to have your component in several states.
Okay. And then can you also just play around with the props as well?
Yeah, definitely. You get another add-on for that, which is called the knobs add-on. So same way, you can, instead of just passing a prop, you can pass the prop with a default value, but then you also add extra information, like if it's a number or if it's a string or if it's an object, etc., etc. And then this add-on will display those props inside a new panel, and then everybody could play with them. So, for example, if you have a number on your components and you say the default value is 1, then you will have a new entry on this panel, and you will be able to tap any number. And then the component will be re-rendered with the new props. So it's great because your user or colleagues or whatever, if they saw a component with some props, they can actually play with the props and see what the props are doing. What are the behavior of the props.
Yeah, and I think that's useful not only for your fellow programmers, but also designers and PMs and managers and things like that.
Yes, definitely.
Cool. So you talked a lot about add-ons. Did you also made an add-on, right?
Yeah, because I love a lot the concept of living documentation. Before working for front-end stuff, I was a lot involved with, not involved, but I had a lot of interest into behavior-driven developments and those tools like Cucumber or Given that allows you to write some scenarios and execute some code behind, and then you can create a documentation. So when I switched it to front-end development, with Storybook, it was a bit of the same thing for me. You got your stories, and then, because it's live, it's real code that is executed behind, I wanted a way to test them, because I know that when you develop, at some point you can break things if it's not tested. So obviously, you will probably test your components in other files and stuff like that. But then you end up with duplication of your stories and your test files, and I wanted a way to actually avoid that. So I can test directly my stories. And so I developed a small add-on that allows typically that you can write your test just next to your stories and then display those results directly in the Storybook. The idea was to use those tests as specification of your components, because even though it's UI component and it should not have that many business things inside them, often you've got things that are actually business related. And so if you're a new employee, or even yourself later, sometimes it's great to actually saw those business rules, and the tests are actually there for that. So it was the idea to write tests next to the stories.
Okay, cool. So what kind of tests are you writing on components? Are you just like, are you doing snapshot tests to see what the output of the render function is? Or is there, you mentioned business logic. What kind of business logic could you test?
So actually, with Storybook, you can snapshot your stories. It's provided by the tool. It's called Snapshots. And it's based on obviously on just snapshotting and snapshot testing. So what this library does is that it's take all your stories and that it snapshots them. So you've got all those markup images somewhere. And if you start developing, then you will see the diff. And it will say, you will see if you did some regressions or not. The idea of my plugin, of my add-on, which is called the specification add-on, is a bit different. Is that it's not really to test like markup, HTML markup. It's more like to check actions, or like I said, more things that you want to explicit, like business logic in terms of data that can be, not data, but things that actually relates to data. And then for that, you can use whatever you want that works in the browser. So I typically use Enzyme and expect for the assertion. So you mount your stories, and then you can, use the Enzyme API and then use the assertions.
Okay. Okay, so you can see those tests, whether they pass or fail in Storybook. Can you also see if they fail somewhere else, like in the command line?
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's you can actually configure your application to use both, to have both. Inside the
Okay.
Storybook and then in the CI.
Cool. Does the tab light up red or something if you have a failing test inside that tab? Because you might forget to look in there.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's the result inside the tab is more to actually see the specs. Or see if there is a failure if you are developing this current component. But to me, about failure, it's more you need to look at the CI. Like if you run all the stories, you can see the failures. Because
Okay.
yeah, the result part on the Storybook, it's more about like reading the specification of the components.
Cool. What other kind of add-ons are there?
There's a lot. I would divide them into like two parts. Some stuff about like styling components. For example, there's some add-ons that helps resizing the window to help you actually ensure that your components are responsive. Some add-ons that will change the background color of the Storybook, again, to help you with the styling. And you got also all the add-ons that are more related to documentation. For example, you've got one that will generate the source of your components in a way that if somebody goes into the Storybook, he sees the component and then he saw the usage, so he can copy paste. And other stuff like generate props. What else? I think there's some that allows you to actually add a README. So if you need that, so there's a lot of different things, and the good thing with Storybook is that actually creating an add-on is easy. So everybody could create their own if they need so, and then they can share it with the others.
Cool. So another thing you mentioned in talk was linking stories together, where if you click on one component, it will link you to another, or if you click on one story, it'll link you to another story.
Yeah.
What is the purpose of that exactly? I wasn't sure.
Yeah, the purpose is to actually, it depends of how you use a Storybook. For example, us at Algolia, we are using like our fully connected components, so they actually target Algolia. So if you click on them, they live by themselves because it's a top component, But often you actually use the raw components, so the lowest one, so there's nothing. So one idea would be to show how the component, if you click on a button, what that button is supposed to do. And so probably it will get you to another substate of this component, so you can link the stories together to show how they can then actually interact together.
Okay, yeah. So, do you know examples of who is using React Storybook?
So they added a new page on the website that actually showcase companies and projects that are using Storybook, if I remember correctly. So obviously I already mentioned us and Airbnb, but you got also Buffer, I think Lonely Planet. And those are just the public one. I believe a lot of people are using Storybook, but internally, so you don't you cannot see their own project. But now the project has more than 10,000 stars, so I gather some users.
Oh yeah, it's saying Slack and Squarespace also.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. I don't think I have any more questions. Is there anything else that you wanted to say?
So yeah. So one thing I like to add now that I was not saying in March when I did the React Conf about Storybook is that at that moment the project was a bit dead in a way that because it was created by Cadera, a company, this company like shut down, and then there were no more activities on the GitHub repository. So fixes were not like done and pull requests were not merged anymore. So at some point, people were asking if it was possible to actually take over the project. So it was open to the whole community, and a lot of people are really, really involved to make this project live. And so they just released the third version of Storybook. And what's really great is that you got some initiative to actually extend Storybook to Vue and to possibly other framework. So it's really cool. I mean, I think it's a project that will keep living a lot in the future.
Cool. Are you a contributor to Storybook?
I'm part of the team, but because I don't have that much time, I'm just doing like small fixes or I'm talking about it like in conference. But I'm not a lot involved in coding for Storybook right now.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks for letting me know about React Storybook. I'd never heard of it before until you talked about it.
Cool. I hope you like it. And thank you.
Yeah, I'm really thinking about using it at our work because we do something similar, but it's just our own code, and it's not nearly as full featured as Storybook is.
Okay. Well, I think you should definitely try it. It's really a great tool.
Yeah, I think it'd be great, especially for pull requests and being able to build a component in an isolated environment.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, thank you to you. It was great. Thanks.
Thanks for listening. You can find us online at weboftomorrowpodcast.com and on Twitter at weboftomorrowfm. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast player or on YouTube if you prefer, so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes.